Hi everyone, happy Women History Month. My name is Lisa Huang-North and I'm currently a product lead at Planet, a space technology company that's using space to help life on Earth. In celebration of Women History Month, I've had the amazing opportunity to speak with 8 product leaders over the past few months. And today, I'd love to share their stories with you in this 8-part interview series, which I'm calling The Paths to Product. Today, we'll get to hear the story of Fionna Gan, who is currently a product manager at Microsoft. Today, I'm very excited to speak with Fionna Gan, who is currently a growth and product manager at Microsoft, working on Microsoft Teams. So I know you have a very exciting and different path into product management. I see that you started working in marketing and then you did quality assurance. You are a YouTube vlogger and you've even choreographed Holo Pop, a song for the Microsoft team. And I've seen that you're in product management. So please do share a little bit about your path into product with me.
I'll start with my education and how I first heard about PM.
Yeah.
So I studied a program in engineering called Engineering Science at the University of Toronto here in Canada. And the first 2 years were very generic. So we studied everything from civil engineering to robotics to bio. So it was just a mash of all things. And then the last 2 years, I picked biomedical engineering as my major because I still dreamt to be a doctor at that time. But soon after, I realized that I didn't enjoy the courses and the research life after uni didn't suit me. So when I was in my second year, I joined a student club that helps students to find jobs as a marketing lead because at that time I was good at graphic design. And I would say that was a pivotal moment for me. And even for my school life, my career, and even for my personal life, because I met people outside of my discipline. And our program is very small and people are very tight. I only see my classmates all the time. Sure. So that was a great opportunity to socialize. And I also learned a ton from upper years who have interned at various companies. And while I was attending the career fair that I helped the group to organize, I interviewed with Amazon for a technical role, but later on changed to a marketing role in Hong Kong, which is what I did for marketing. And quality assurance, I would say for my first 2 summers internships, I did a marketing right now looking back, it's kind of interesting because the title at that time was product specialist, but I don't think it was very related to product management per se, because at that time it was mostly a marketing plus sales position because I put together resources for customers to understand the product and actually went on the streets to go door by door to sell the product. So that was my first kind of internship. It was not technical at all, like what a typical PM role is today. And then the second summer, I went back to the same company and did the quality assurance job, which was more closely related to, say, technology / product, because I worked closely with the developers to come up with a series of tests to perform after they make changes to the product. And the product was actually an ordering app for a restaurant. It's funny because it was a Japanese sushi restaurant for Hong Kong. And when I went to intern in Hong Kong 2 years later, I actually saw the cashiers, the waitresses, the waiters use the app. Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah. So that was really funny. That was my kind of 2 types of positions I took on before becoming a full-time product manager. So when I was doing my marketing job in Hong Kong for Amazon, it was a very out-facing role. It faced my personality at that time, but I found the scope to be too limited for me because I didn't have full control of the product. Basically, I'm taking the product that is complete and try to come up with language and graphics that would really exemplify or amplify the benefits to the customers. It gave me a good understanding of who who are our audience and what language, what visuals would elicit certain action, emotions from them. So that was a good learning. Marketing at that time to me, it was a bit like advertising, which is really creative role, which I think will probably be a better fit for me. But it was still, you're still under the confinement of the company's brand guidelines. For example, Amazon, Microsoft, all these tech companies, you have to follow their color scheme, their fonts. You can't really do anything, quote unquote, out of the line.
There's the sandbox, and this is where you can play.
Exactly. So I felt that was too limiting, and I didn't feel like I could impact the product in any way. But then I came back from that internship and shared my experiences with others, and so did they. I learned at that time, at least in Canada, there were two roles that were like super hot among the engineering kids. One was consulting, interestingly, business consulting mostly, and the other was product management. Typically for those two roles, as a biomed student, I don't have any ties to those two roles. Actually, people who studied industrial engineering were the easiest to get those jobs. So then what I did in fourth year was taking courses that are related to product management, but we all know that really in school there isn't a course, there isn't a degree in PM. So I try to find anything that's remotely close to it so I can get some systematic kind of education on it, besides reading books like Cracking the PM interview and all that. And then as a marketing lead in the student club, give me some teamwork and organization experience to help me kind of gain an edge on how do I work with a team, how do I organize a project, manage its timeline, etc. So that also helped me with my resume. And Microsoft was one of the recruiters that came to our career fair, but at that time they didn't have any PM positions available. They were mostly for software engineering. So I still got in touch with the recruiter and kept following up. I remember, I think maybe once a month, I follow up with the recruiter until finally she emailed me back saying, hey, we have like an opening on this team, and I will forward your resume to that team and see how it goes. So that kind of opened my door to a PM position or interview with Microsoft in my final year.
That's great. So I think what I'm hearing is that you're able to try out a few different roles through your internship experiences, and through there you figure out what you like and what you didn't enjoy as much. Once you're able to really find that community of cohort through both the student clubs you were with, as well as the academic program you're with, you got to hear and learn more about kind of product management as a discipline. And then it was persistence in following up with the recruiter that really got you that first foot in the door, right? Where the recruiter was able to say, all right, Fiona's clearly passionate. She's been emailing me every month. So here's a role. I think she'll be a great fit. Let me forward her resume. And the rest is history.
Yes, even I think throughout my college and in picking a career, it was by the process of elimination. I first eliminated my own major, biomed. I don't want to do this anymore. I was very clear about that. And then through my background of other internships, this is kind of what I want to do, but the scope is not enough. And then I heard from my upper years that they did this PM job that incorporated all of this QA marketing to owning the product from end to end. That was the final thing that kind of like got me hooked to PM.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing your story. That's so cool. And I think I really love hearing about the diverse experience, because I think something you hear often from, especially folks who are aspiring product manager looking to move into the product management role, right? It is those kind of hindsight's 2020. When you look back at the experiences you have and the skills you have, you can actually see, oh yeah, some of these are still very much relevant to the role of a PM, and you can carry that forward. Which leads me to this question, the next question I have for you. Now, having been at Microsoft, I believe for 4+ years, pretty much since your graduation, I was wondering, what would you say are some of the key skills and or qualities that are crucial for a product manager at Microsoft?
Yes, and I'll answer that in two parts. So I've been at Microsoft for 4.5 years now, and I've been on two teams. One is in Azure, and that was related to the cloud aspect. More recently, as you know, in Microsoft Teams. And within Teams, I'm managing a consumer-facing app. There's Microsoft Teams for work that companies use, and then there is Microsoft Teams for your personal life, where anyone, you don't need a license to use. My first part of career at Microsoft, I would say the product was very enterprise facing. The customers I interacted with were all these companies, small, medium, large companies. The skills that PM would need to succeed in these type of roles would be one, understanding of the ecosystem of your product. What is the problem that faced by your customers, and how does your product fit into the picture? And also, how does your product fit into the picture of all the products that Microsoft offers? This might not apply for a startup that just has one product, but because there's so many cloud solutions out there from Microsoft, and also understanding how your competitors like AWS, Google Cloud, how does their solution look like? And also understanding the market, again, is going back to the problem that your customers are facing. And it would be good to understand the legacy practices that exist in the market. For me, for example, what is an on-prem database or a cloud solution versus a cloud? Because a lot of the bigger companies out there, they still have, maybe if they're not fully on-prem, meaning they have their databases they have their data stored in databases, versus there may be a hybrid, or they have some on the cloud. They still have maybe customer or confidential information stored in an actual data center. Understanding how your product fits in and the areas that you can grow the product into.
I've seen this as well, having now currently I work in a B2B product. So what you're speaking really resonate. I think those are the fine-tuned nuances that a lot, if you haven't worked in B2B yet, you might not be familiar. I love the fact that you point out legacy database, right? Which is kind of how are customers currently solving problems, or what is their current tech stack? And then one thing which I thought was fascinating, how does your product, in this case Azure, fits into the greater scheme of things? Because with Microsoft's ecosystem, there's a lot of different moving parts or different solutions that can come into play. So almost not just being an expert of your product, but knowing when or where to pull in other PMs of other related Microsoft products. I imagine that's a different skill set that you might not have if you're just a small single product startup, for example.
Which I think, as a new grad PM going to B2B space, I think it was especially challenging, not for me, but also for my peers as well, because, having graduated from school, all the apps or the software we're using are like Slack, Messenger, Snapchat, all these trendy, very customer-facing products. And then going to what is cloud, like what is security, what is identity for these problems that you didn't know existed. That was my biggest realization. So ramping up to that took some time, which was also a reason why I switched, because I wanted to be closer to the customer. I want to relate to them. For a enterprise-facing software or solution, it was a lot harder because I'm not an IT admin. And in terms of the qualities and skills, I would say for PM to succeed in the consumer product role would be, number one, a customer obsession. I know I'm stealing this from Amazon, one of their leadership principles, but I think it's crucial to have that in any company. Understanding your customer and taking initiative to understand the market trends. Oh, Snapchat just came out with this, Google just came out with that. How is the audience responding to that? Because their audience could easily be yours if it's consumer facing. And especially in the productivity space, you really have to be on the lookout to see what Zoom is doing. We have this channel on Teams that's called Competitive Info. That's like my go-to channel every morning to see, what are the news? Because people collect news from different sources about our competitors and post it there. So that was kind of like my newsfeed read every morning. I really enjoyed that. To be a data person and also a UI person. So on data is you have to understand metrics. First of all, when you first define a feature that you want to build, you need to know the OKRs, but also looking at an existing feature or a product that you just shipped. What are the metrics that are telling you that if it's doing well or if it's not? What are the real metrics that tell you how well your product's doing instead of just the ones that are good and flashy to look at? You need to have an eye for good design. There's a reason why Slack, Google, Messenger, these apps are popular. They're really simple and they're easy on the eye. They're intuitive. Being able to kind of change your mindset a bit and kind of tying in your everyday experience into a good design for your feature is really crucial. Of course, you can work with designers and you have a team to help you support that. But I think as a PM, even with just the napkin mock-ups or like simple wireframe, is really important to embed those elements in before you move on too far in the timeline. I would say, lastly, writing specs fast. The times are changing so much, especially with the pandemic. People's needs are evolving. You need to look at basically look behind the lens to see what are the real problems that people are facing. Like ask Flywise to find out what the root problem is and solve that instead of what customers are saying they need. And from there, write one pagers or put together a PowerPoint slide. This is what I think will help our customers, because if you have an idea is brilliant, but you need to execute it. And to be able to execute, you need to convince your stakeholders, like your developers, designers, your peer PMs, to support this idea. And the best way to do that is show them something, mock up in Figma, to show them this is what I think will help. One difference I found was in Azure, I think I wrote about probably 1 or 2 specs per year. Moving on to this new team, I think I wrote almost 8 specs in the last half year.
Oh wow! Yeah, so the
pace
has changed dramatically.
And there was a lot more emphasis on the UI because we want to see how the feature looks like or how the end-to-end flow. But because we're doing all these planning and we're looking at, okay, what do we want to do for Q1 to Q2? Let's do a spec review just to get the ideas out. And even for my first exercise on this new job, my manager asked me, if you were to switch from, say, Slack to Teams or Messenger to Teams, what are the killing features, like the must-have features that Teams would have for you to transition over? So I brainstormed a list of that, and then those, a lot of them became one-pagers and then full spec. I think it's really valuable in especially consumer-facing product roles.
I really like that, because I think that's something which is actionable even for folks who are looking to job search and interview, right? These are thought exercises that they can do even as part of the preparation for researching the company, understanding the product, understanding the customer. To your point, I think that example between Slack and Teams is a great example of what are absolute must-have and almost non-negotiable features that you have to have before someone's even willing to entertain the idea of, okay, all right, let's talk. Maybe I'm willing to switch. In fact, as of October 2020, Microsoft Teams have reached 115 million daily active users, which is huge. Yeah, and firstly, congratulations to your team. I mean, it's great to meet, part of the team, someone who is behind building this absolutely popular and fully engaged, highly active use product. So what are some of the maybe surprises or challenges you have faced working on this super hyper growth product?
Thank you. I obviously can't take any credit. After joining the team, it's like, oh wow, I'm part of the team that made all this happen. So that felt really good, even as a PM, because I think sometimes you need that, that booster. Again, like 150 million DAO is a huge number. But again, we all know that that's a vanity metric. So don't want to put too much emphasis on that, because we want to realize to look at the, at least to me, the more important ones, like the dark users, how many people are dropping off, looking at kind of the funnel, how many people got to the download side but then dropped off. I want to understand why. Right. So I think those metrics are more interesting to look at. The biggest challenging, I would say, is to, again, Microsoft is a huge company. Every part of the teams is linked to another technology that was built before. Skype was, Teams was built on Skype, but also the sign in and sign up flow is, we're reusing that from the identity folks. In order for someone to log in and sign up for an account, you need to go through that flow. And because there are difficulties in getting someone to sign up successfully, we kind of inherited those difficulties and challenges from that. At least from me as a new person joining, without any background knowledge on how or why those happened, it was difficult to go through. It was the flow was not intuitive for someone new without any understanding of Microsoft account to successfully sign in. So the simplicity of the UI was, I would say, the biggest challenge for us, making a simple UI and also simplifying an existing UI. Security is also very important for our consumers, from businesses to schools to everyday individuals like us, especially for companies. There are, I'm not trying to bash anyone here, but for companies who have decided not to use certain products because their lack of security or they have concerns about the practices, I think again is really important for PMs to take those in mind and to look at your company's image and your mission and build certain aspects of your future to align with your company's mission, and don't take shortcuts, because that's the best way or easiest way to get customers. So simplicity is great, but it has to be backed up by security.
In this day and age where individuals, obviously we care about privacy, we care about how our personal data is or not being used, and if we can opt out of tracking, cookies, and all these other aspects, not to mention at the enterprise or business level, right, where security is very much front of mind for, I believe, many IT providers, CEOs, right? You'd know that a huge leak of not just your company's data, but your company's customers' data, that will be detrimental. Yeah, so that's a really key point. Thank you for pointing that out. So I have two quick questions, and hopefully to end on a fun note. I'd love to hear what remote work or productivity trends that you're most excited about.
One is, it's great to work anywhere, that there isn't any geo-specific limitations as to where one could work. But I think for traditional companies, especially larger companies, they're more open and more lenient on, flexible on where my employees could work. So, and it has been proven that we can still be productive even though we're thousands of. So I think that's opened the door for a lot of people. We can attend workshops that's like far away from us, from different continents. So that's great. I don't have to fly over to San Jose to attend the Women in Product Conference, which is amazing.
That's how we actually managed to connect, right? It's like we haven't met in person. In fact, the conferences, we didn't even attend physically, but we were able to meet each other, which is amazing. So last question. What is one piece of advice, and I know for you it's not that long ago, but maybe what's one piece of advice you would give to your 18, early 20-year-old self, someone who is very early in their career and just beginning to look into product management or just into kind of starting their career?
One is find a circle of friends or a circle of people who can support you, who will inspire you to become a better version of yourself. It could be related to being a better product manager or finding an opportunity in the field of PM, but finding that circle of support will help you go a long way. Second would be establish a system for learning and improving yourself with credible sources instead of following trends or fads on the internet. there's so many sources you can look at. There could be someone who is really has a lot of followers on Twitter or on YouTube, but then their advice is not backed by their experience. They're just saying it for views. But from there, you can look at verified or reputable institutions or schools or writers for those advice. Just like listen to so many ways of doing something, and that it just didn't match up at the end, and I didn't know who to listen to anymore. So that was a lesson learned.
That's a great reminder. Yep. While it's both powerful as well as in some ways scary, right? To have the world's information at our fingertips, and we really have to be more conscious and intentional about kind of how we consume and make sure it's vetted before we just take it at face value. Going back to those vanity metrics, watch out for the follower numbers.
I would say don't forget or don't give up on your passion projects. I think this goes back to vlogging or being a YouTuber. So I really started that in 4th year, which gets in YouTube timeline age. It's probably a bit late, but I was really inspired by Casey Neistat, a YouTuber, a vlogger who lived in New York at that time. He really inspired me to create these short videos to document my day in a really fun and also interesting way. So I started doing that. I just pulled out a camera and just kind of filmed myself talking to the camera and out on the street, in school, where people look at me in a weird way, but I was like, I don't care, I'm just gonna make this. So I think that actually helped me become a PM or find a position in PM, because that boosted my confidence. In the process, I had to think about what to film and kind of schedule my day around that, and also the editing process, deciding what should go where, what kind of effects, transitions I should use, and how should I market my videos. So that itself was kind of, in hindsight, kind of a project. Exactly, I'm a PM of my videos. So I thought that was super interesting, and I definitely leveraged my experiences of vlogging in PM interviews, or even later on in marketing my product. Think about, okay, what would my audience like, and how should I position this, and what kind of visuals would be suitable. So yes, find people who inspire you, vet your sources, and keep doing what you're passionate about.
So for folks who watch this video, what's the best way to connect with you?
Yep, you can find me on YouTube as Fionna Gan, just my first and last name. Same thing on Twitter, thinking about starting a newsletter in the coming year, just sharing like PM insights, or just like daily. I'm also learning languages, so sharing insights around that. So yeah, look forward to it.
Thank you so much, Fionna. I really appreciate this, and thank you for taking the time to share your knowledge with us today.
Yeah, no worries. I really enjoyed this process, and it's a good reminder why I started at PM and where I want to be. So thank you for doing that.
Wonderful. I hope you enjoyed today's interview series, and be sure to check back to hear from the other 7 amazing product leaders. Thank you, and happy Women's History Month.